For over 50 years, his voice has been a constant soundtrack for road trips, heartbreaks, and quiet moments of reflection. We know the name Don Henley as a titan of music, the voice and heartbeat behind the legendary Eagles, and a solo artist who basically defined an era of rock and roll. We know the fame, the sold-out stadiums, and the whirlwind of a life lived in the fastest of lanes. His lyrics told us stories of restless nights, lost innocence, and the dark, glittering allure of the Hotel California. But what if the biggest story, the one that truly defined the man behind the music, was the one he kept closest to his heart, far from the roar of the crowd? We know the rock and roll excess and the string of high-profile romances that made headlines. But what if the greatest story of all was the one he never really told? Now, at 78, the famously private musician is finally confessing who the true love of his life was. This is the untold story of the woman who captured his heart and why he's finally ready to share their private journey with the world. It's a journey that proves sometimes the greatest hit isn't a song, but a love that lasts a lifetime. Before the platinum albums and global tours, there was just a boy from a small town in East Texas. Donald Hugh Henley was born on July 20, 1947, in Gilmer, and grew up in the quiet, dusty town of Linden, Texas. He was an only child, son of a World War II vet who ran an auto parts business and a teacher mom. It was a classic American upbringing, steeped in the sounds that filled the airwaves of the 1950s. Their home was filled with big band music. His grandmother sang hymns, and his father tuned the radio to the country, drifting out of Nashville. This mix of sounds was his first musical education, but it was the explosion of rock and roll that really lit the fuse. Like millions of others, Henley's world was completely changed by the Beatles. He once recalled, "When the Beatles came along, life changed. The planets all shifted somehow. That's when I became very serious about doing music as a profession." He tried high school football, but his coach, noting his smaller build, gently suggested he might be a better fit for the school band. First, he picked up the trombone, but his natural talent was for rhythm. He was always tapping out beats on his school books and the dashboard. It wasn't long before he was moved to percussion, and the rest is history. With some childhood friends, he formed a band, first called the Four Speeds, then Felicity. They were a local act, but Henley was already sharpening his songwriting skills, even getting a song called Hurting recorded by a local producer. His studies took him to North Texas State University, where he majored in English literature, diving into the works of Emerson and Thoreau. That literary influence would become a hallmark of his songwriting at depth that set his work apart. Emerson's essay on self-reliance pushed him to chase his musical dreams, but his college career was cut short when he left to be with his father, who was gravely ill with heart disease. The band, now called Shiloh, eventually got a break from another Texan, Kenny Rogers, who saw their potential and helped them land a record deal. Rogers brought them to Los Angeles in 1970, the epicenter of the music world. Shiloh recorded one album before breaking up a year later over creative differences, but LA had other plans for Don Henley. It was at the legendary Troubadour Club that he met a laid-back musician from Michigan named Glenn Frey. Both were on the same label, and their chemistry was instant. Frey and Henley were hired to join Linda Ronstadt's backing band. While touring with her, they were joined by bassist Randy Meisner and guitarist Bernie Leadon. The sound they made together was just undeniable. The harmonies were perfect, the musicianship was tight, and you could feel the ambition. After a gig at Disneyland, they made the fateful choice to start their own band. In 1971, the Eagles were born. With a sound that blended rock, country, and folk, they would go on to define the 70s, selling over 150 million albums and becoming the highest-selling American band in history. Henley, as the drummer and co-lead singer, was at the center of it all. His distinctive, raspy voice delivered some of the most iconic songs in rock, from Witchy Woman and Desperado to the generation-defining Hotel California. He had made it, rising from a small Texas town to the absolute peak of rock royalty. But with that fame came a life in the fast lane, a world that would shape his long, winding search for something real. The 70s and 80s were a total whirlwind for Don Henley. The Eagles owned the airwaves, and their lives became a mirror of their rock anthems, a mix of poetic sadness and wild excess. Henley, with his brooding smarts and a voice that could be both cynical and vulnerable, was a magnetic figure. His love life started getting as much attention as his music, a series of high-profile relationships that often bled into his songs. One of his first major relationships in the mid-70s was with jewelry designer Lori Rock. Their connection was intense, and its end reportedly inspired the beautiful, sad ballad Wasted Time from the Hotel California album. The song captures the bittersweet pain of looking back on a love that's over. Some even say the themes of being trapped in Hotel California itself echo that period of his life. After splitting with Rodkin, Henley began one of the most talked-about rock romances of the era with another music giant, Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac. It was a meeting of two of the biggest forces in 70s music. Both the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac were at their peak, and their relationship was a passionate, if rocky affair that lasted on and off for about 2 years. Their romance left a clear mark on their music. They later recorded the iconic duet, Leather and Lace, a song that captured the delicate balance between two powerful people. But the most painful legacy of their time together was revealed by Nix decades later. She shared that she had become pregnant with Henley's child but chose to have an abortion, feeling it was necessary given their intense careers and the drug-fueled environment. This revelation casts the haunting Fleetwood Mac song Sarah in a new, deeply personal light. Their relationship couldn't survive the pressure, but their friendship and musical connection lasted. As the 70s turned into the 80s, Henley's love life kept making news. He had a 3-year relationship with actress Lois Chiles, known for her role in Moonraker. Chiles later said that while they loved each other, their lives just didn't line up. It was another chapter in his very public search for a connection that would stick. His next relationship, however, seemed different. In the early 1980s, Henley started dating Battlestar Galactica actress and model Maren Jensen, and the two became engaged. He dedicated his first solo album, 1982's I Can't Stand Still, to her. Jensen even sang harmony on the track Johnny Can't Read and appeared in his video for Not Enough Love in the World. Their relationship faced a huge test when Jensen was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr syndrome, an illness that ended her acting career. In a major show of commitment, Henley stepped back from his own hectic career to care for her. It was a private act of devotion that was a world away from his public image. Despite their engagement and the deep bond they formed, the relationship ended in 1986. They remained friends, and Jensen later helped him establish the Walden Woods Project, but the end of another engagement marked a turning point. Henley had sought love in the glare of the spotlight with women as famous as he was. But the love that would finally ground him was waiting just around the corner, far from the world of rock and roll. He just didn't know it yet. By the early 90s, Don Henley had lived a life most people could only imagine. He was a founding member of one of history's most successful bands, had a celebrated solo career, and was a powerful voice for environmental causes. Yet, for all his success, he seemed to be missing a key piece of the puzzle. He'd been engaged before, but admitted he was glad it never worked out earlier. He told one interviewer, "I think I would have been a failure if I had done it earlier. And I've always believed that the lives of children are too important to be part of an immature experiment." The fast lane had taken its toll, and Henley was ready for a change of pace. And then, in 1993, everything changed. The moment didn't happen at a sold-out arena or a Hollywood party. It happened through a simple introduction. A music agent named Angus Wynn introduced Henley to a former model named Sharon Summerall. And just like that, the decades-long search was over. Sharon Summerall wasn't a rock star or a famous actress. She was a fellow Texan, born on April 30, 1963, and raised in Dallas with roots in the kind of farm life Henley understood. There was an instant connection. Henley later said, "Sharon grew up here, her father grew up on a farm like mine did, so we have a lot in common." It was a sense of home he hadn't found in the glittering but hollow world of LA. Summerall had her own story of strength. She had built a successful modeling career, signing with the famous Ford Models Agency and working internationally. But her career was brutally interrupted in December 1982 by a serious car crash that left her with a severe neck injury. With incredible determination, she made a comeback 2 years later. Then, in the early 1990s, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, MS, a chronic disease that would ultimately end her modeling career for good. She was a woman who had faced huge challenges with grace, and her quiet strength was the perfect match for Henley's restless spirit. Their courtship wasn't a tabloid show, it was a private, deepening love. After about 2 years of dating, they decided to get married. On May 20, 1995, Don Henley and Sharon Summerall tied the knot. The wedding itself was legendary, held in Malibu with a guest list that was a who's who of music. Bruce Springsteen, Sting, Billy Joel, and his bandmate Glenn Frey were among those who performed. But more than the stars, the wedding marked a huge shift in Henley's life. It was the closing of one chapter full of fleeting romances and the beginning of a new one, centered on partnership, family, and a much deeper meaning of happiness. This wasn't just a marriage, it was a homecoming. The man who wrote so powerfully about searching had finally found his reason to stay. He'd found the person who saw him for who he was, beyond the music and the myth. For a man who had spent decades in the public eye, Don Henley's life with Sharon Summerall became a lesson in protecting what's most important. After their wedding, they made a deliberate choice. They left Los Angeles. The couple moved to Dallas, Texas, choosing to build their life and raise a family far from the pressures of Hollywood. Henley put it plainly, "I wanted my children to have an upbringing similar to my own. I don't want to raise my children out there in an environment of such self-absorption." They settled into a life that was, for a rock star, remarkably normal. They had 3 children, daughters Annabelle and Julia, and a son Will. Their life revolved around school, soccer games, and family. Henley, the global music icon, became a dad who served on the school board. He said, "Family is the most important thing in my life," a simple but powerful statement from a man who once seemed to have everything else. This commitment was proven by Sharon's ongoing battle with multiple sclerosis. An MS diagnosis is a huge challenge for any couple, but for Don and Sharon, it became the ultimate test of their bond. Henley became her devoted partner, organizing his life and career around her health. He spoke about her condition with quiet dignity, saying, "She is managing, holding her own. She has her good weeks and her bad weeks." This meant the old rock and roll lifestyle of endless touring was over. His schedule was now built around her needs, showing where his priorities truly were. The love and stability he found with Sharon clearly flowed into his music. In 2000, after an 11-year gap, he released the solo album, Inside Job. On it was a song he wrote just for his wife, "Everything is Different Now." The lyrics are a heartfelt confession about the power of her love. He sings about being lost and found by an angel with the golden wings and a heart as big as Texas. In the song's most telling lines, he admits, "I hate to tell you this, but I'm very, very happy. She saw me down here in the dark somehow, and everything is different now." He was telling the whole world a private truth. This love hadn't just changed his life, it had saved it. For years, Henley has spoken about Sharon with a reverence that makes her place in his life perfectly clear. She wasn't the fiery, dramatic love that fueled his early rock anthems. This was something deeper and more real. It was a love built on shared values, respect, and sticking together through life's toughest storms. The proof of his confession isn't in one single statement, but in nearly 3 decades of a life lived in quiet dedication to one woman. After a lifetime of searching, Don Henley found more than just a wife. He found his anchor. Don Henley's journey from rock and roll excess to a quiet, lasting love is a powerful reminder that the best stories often happen off stage. If you're enjoying these deep dives into music history, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss what's next. In the story of rock and roll, Don Henley is a giant. As the voice of the Eagles and a solo artist, he created songs that are now part of our culture. For decades, he was the classic rock star, the poet, the cynic, the restless soul. His journey was tracked through a series of famous relationships, each one leaving its mark on his timeless music. But the final act of his story, the one that truly defines him, isn't about the fast lane. It's about the quiet country road he chose to take. His confession, at 78, that his wife Sharon Summerall is the true love of his life, isn't just a romantic line. It's the core truth of his journey. In Sharon, a resilient woman with Texas roots as deep as his own, he found more than a partner. He found a grounding force and a purpose that fame could never offer. Their nearly 3-decade marriage, their choice to raise a family far from Hollywood, and his unwavering devotion through her battle with MS point to a love of incredible depth. From the chaos of life in the fast lane to the happy admission that everything is different now, Don Henley's life has been a search for real peace. He found it not in the roar of the crowd, but in the love of his wife and family. His journey shows that behind every legend is a human heart, and Don Henley's heart finally found its home. Who is another music legend whose untold love story we should explore next? Let us know in the comments. Peace.